Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with another episode on the Simplicity series that we've started here. Now this is going to be episode 12. So we're going to do something just a little bit different. Again, we just need our pattern paper that we love to hoard, we don't use, and we have an abundance of, your imagination, and a pair of scissors. So here is, if you remember, and I'll have it linked up in the corner somewhere, that I had completed a video making a bridge card. Jennifer McGuire had inspired me to try this, and I used all kinds of dies and embossing folders and everything that was sitting in my stash. But then it got me thinking, could we also do it with just using our pattern paper that we have? Again, we hoard, let's admit it. So this is the pad that I pulled out. And it's actually called Autumn Dream. Now I do not know if this is still available. I get this at my local Michael's. It's one of those hot buys. This is nice, thick cardstock, and it's one-sided. And there were just some beautiful patterns in there. So these are the accenting pieces that I've chose from the pattern paper pad. And I cut them down. And then these are the bases that I've created. Now, I'll have all of the measurements on my blog and also listed down below. So remember, excuse me. So for the portrait, you want to cut your cardstock 5.5 by 5 3/4. And for your landscape, you want to cut your cardstock 4 1/4 by 8 inches. Then you want to grab your ruler. Now, I do use this ruler. This is from my quilting days because it's got perfect lines based on the 1/4 inch, so it's perfect. You want to score at 1 1/4 inch and 2.5 inches. Then you're going to flip your cardstock and you're going to do the same thing. Score at 1 1/4 and at 2.5. Now I did use my paper creaser. If you do not have one of these or a bone folder, you can use the back edge of a butter knife and you will get the same result. Now, for the portrait, you want to score at 3/4 inch and 1.5. Flip it over, 3/4 inch again, and 1.5. And I'm not using any soft surfaces or anything like that. I'm going right down onto my grid. And it's just putting an indentation into the paper so that I can fold on those lines, okay? And it worked just fine. So if you don't have a scoreboard, that's okay. You can just use your knife, or if you do have one of these, you can use this as well. But it doesn't have to be sitting in a scoreboard. Now, if you don't have one of these rulers, you could just use a ruler and on the back side measure out those lines and then fold along those lines. So you're not held back because you may not have all of these awesome tools that are out there. You're not held back from still creating these cards, and that's really what we're showing here today. So now I'm just bending my paper on those crease marks that I created. And I'm using my finger to fold them over. Only because with this cardstock, you could get a white edge if you really burnish that down. And using my fingers, I felt was absolutely fine. I got the folds that I was looking for. So now it's time to decorate our bases, now that we have them set. So I'm just looking over this. And I cut, these were 12 by 12 pieces of paper, and I just cut them in half, 6 by 12. And now I'm just going to cut some of these strips out. Now this one is absolutely gorgeous. These watercolor flowers, I just love the colors of these. I think they're beautiful. I just love the color palette that was all in this paper pad, period. Between the deep rusts, almost reds and golds and those greens. They're just very earthy, what I call earthy. Yeah, it's a technical term. So with this one, that has my sentiment. So I'm just cutting across that, and then I'm going to cut that to make that even. So I'm going to have this panel go across this on a diagonal. So I'm going to grab my liquid adhesive, or whatever adhesive you like. You want to grab that and place your piece down, and I'm just eyeballing where that glue needs to be. So I'm going to set the one side down. Now don't fold it. There you go. Now see how I flattened that out? And then you'll know that you're going to go across, because that's how you glue this. You keep the one side folded and then flatten the other side out, and then you know you will have a perfect form for your bridge card once you pop it back up in place. I'm just going to trim off the pieces of cardstock that are hanging over the edge, and then we have part of our bridge. So we just have that decoration, and I think the backdrop of the wood grain paper just really adds to this. I think it makes that strip just really pop. Now, I probably should have taken the sentiment and connected it onto the strip of paper first, but I wasn't quite sure where it was going to sit. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on each end and then secure that on the bridge. And then that actually adds a little bit more strength going across that piece. And that is our first bridge card. Again, just using pattern paper. Again, let your paper do the work. That's why we hoard it. That's why we love it. So for our next one, you can see I'm focusing on the landscape ones first. We'll be getting to those portraits very soon. So there was just three. I was looking at these three strips: the plaid, the one with the watercolor leaves going across, and then the other one with the leaves looking like they're hanging from a string. I really liked those. The other one that I fell in love with is the one that really messes up the camera sometime with all of that gold as the lights are gleaming down on that. It can change the color of the screen, especially for pictures. Yes. But I really liked these colors. So just the way that I placed them, that looks great. You know, create a weave going across. You know, take your pattern papers that you have in different strips, create a weave, and have that going across the front. That would be absolutely cool. So I'm just going to take these and go straight across. I'm going to make them even on the one side, and then I'll attach them to the other side, and then I'll trim off those the paper edges. I wanted to make sure my backdrop was fitting the way that I wanted it to, and I wanted the darker shades towards the bottom and the lighter shades, excuse me, I can't talk today, coming to the top. So once that's set, I will then make sure that I'm just going to flip that back. I'll be able to see how high to set my glue up, and then set that down with it flat, and I'll have that perfect bridge going across. I wanted to have this piece coming up from behind that strip. Doesn't matter, we're just going to trim it and give that illusion. So when I glue this down, I'm going to butt this right up against that other cardstock to make it look like it is coming from underneath. It's not perfect, but we don't need to stop, and we don't need to take anything apart. Just continue to do what you're doing. So I don't have the gap, and yes, if you look to the right, that is the awesome, in case anybody's in the area, you know, if you're looking for a good pizzeria, that's it. Yes, so we finally moved that. Sorry about that. We were looking at dinner when I filmed this one, me and my hubs. Yeah, you just never know what comes flying in. Thank God sometimes I do the voiceovers. Oh boy. So I'm putting in the last one, and I want that one to go along the top. And then again, once they're set, I've got a good strength going across that. I'm just going to trim off these edges along my bridge base. And now everything's nice and even. So now we need a sentiment. One of the pages that came in this paper pad, now you could certainly use sentiment that you have in your stack by all means, but this did come with this large 12 by 12 paper with all of these wonderful cards. So I'm going to cut one of those out. Now for the portraits, I'll be cutting more of these out as well. But I'm just cutting along the gold because I do like the gold frame that's with that sentiment as well. I'm just going to even up the gold edges, and then I'm going to set that. So I still want to be able to see the opening, but I still wanted that to sit on a diagonal going across that. So I'm just going to put my hand in there just to make sure that that's secured. Remove the extra glue in case I flatten this and it sticks together. And then that is that card. So you can still see the back or through to the other side, but we've created the bridge. Again, just using our pattern papers. So for our portrait, still using the same papers, except I did flip the wood grain. So instead of the wood grain going from side to side, I have that going from top to bottom. Gives it just a little bit of a different look. These are the few cutouts that I created, or that I cut out, of course. And again, using those sentiments if you don't have any sentiment stamp sets. I'm going to glue that right over the plaid. I thought that accented it really well. And then I'm going to use a scrap piece of the wood grain, and I'm going to use that for the backdrop of I'm falling in love with autumn. I thought that created just a really strong, made that pop off the page. Now again, not using any dies, I'm going to use my scissors just to cut the border that goes around this. You can measure that. Again, it's white on the other side, so you can draw your image on the other side so that you can get a more even cut. I'm sure I'm crooked, which, yes, it goes on crooked. So I'm just eyeballing the way this bridge will sit. And then I'm just going to add glue to the other side, and then I will flatten it out so that I can place this down. Now this is where I know I went a little bit crooked, and I'm okay with that. And that just sits right in the center. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Now this panel going across was a little bit wider than what I wanted. So I'm just going to trim off the edges, making it even with the sentiment panel. And then I'll still have just a little bit of border on each of the sides, a very thin. And I'm going to set this one up just a little bit, not dead on center there. Do the same thing. I'll put glue on the other side, flatten it out. Again, a little off, but that's okay. And those are our cards. Again, so you can see, using basic supplies that you already have in your stash, not the fancy gadgets that are out there. While they're wonderful, you do not need them to make these types of cards. Scissors, ruler, a pencil, and pattern paper. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some ideas to dig into those stashes of pattern paper that we hoard. I am one, I admit it, there should be a group. But you can still create with these wonderful techniques that our other creators come out with on a daily basis on YouTube. You are also able to create those cards as well. I will see. I doubt this pattern paper pad is still available, but I will see, and if it is, I will link it down below. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below as well, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and just spending a little bit of time with me today. And again, I do hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss the next. Have a great day, everyone, but always remember what's most important. Always be creative.